And the only conversation I had with Keith Richards was he thanked us for supporting, and he said the last time I supported a band was when I supported Bo Diddley.
The release of the self-titled Idylewild, their 10th album, My Word Time Flies, is out on October the 3rd via V2 Records. There is a purchasing link just below this video, so I urge you to check it out. Roddy, my first question is, I think I read somewhere in an interview somewhere that do you really feel you've perfected your sound with this album, and what exactly do you mean by that?
Well, I don't think perfected it, maybe be the expression, because I'm not a perfectionist, or I don't think we are perfectionists in that way. But I do think that if the reason we called it Idlewild was because listening back to the songs after we'd written them, we realised that it kind of had elements of all the different records that we've made together, and in a kind of sort of celebration of our own style, I guess. You know, like when you got older, you have less and less um, anxiety about that, but kind of celebrating things you've done, or like referencing yourself or whatever. So I guess that's what we're trying to say with this record. It's like if it's a really good introduction to Idyllwild, which is quite a strange thing to say since it's our 10th album.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's strange enough you bring me on to my next question, really, is um, I was going to ask you really about how the band has evolved over the years to this record. And what would you say is the album that my listeners should go to buy to check you out? You're probably going to say the latest one.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, I mean, the latest record is the truest reflection of who we are now.
Mhm.
So, if your listeners wanted to listen to Idlewild in 2025, I would definitely say listen to this record. But I suppose the kind of classic Idlewild record, if you'd call it that, is the Remote Part, which was certainly our biggest record commercially. And that's like, what, 2002, so over 20 years ago it came out. And I think that sort of cemented what Idlewild sound like for a lot of people, this kind of anthemic, kind of melodic, sweeping kind of rock music. So I would probably tell people to either buy the new one or go to the Remote Part.
And how do you feel when you listen to that album these days?
I like it. I mean, I think it's done a lot for me and us as, a creative people. It's allowed us lots of opportunities. So I have a real fondness for all the songs and the way we made them and the story behind making them. So yeah, I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I mean, you talk about looking back. Do you feel there's a place for nostalgia in music generally,
Yeah, I
or,
do.
or, or do you think it's a bit can be a bit cynical?
Well, it can be a bit cynical. It just depends how you approach it. I do think that the past is really important to the present, musically speaking. It informs a lot of what comes next, obviously. So nostalgia doesn't need to be a negative thing. Doesn't mean after you're trying to be something that's already happened. But I love listening to old records. Looking at old record sleeves and even like looking at old photographs of Idlewild in the 90s or whatever, that kind of thing, and it makes me excited about the future and what I can do. So I think it's got a place in that way.
Yeah, yeah. Um, there's some great, actually, some wonderful songs on this album. It's not the first time there's a great number. There's lots of wonderful songs on it, but the number that really interested me, I'd like to know kind of what inspired it or the story behind it or how you wrote it really is The Mirror Still. Interesting
Hmm.
title.
Yeah. Um, I think the last record that we did was called Interview Music, and that was 6 years ago. And that record, we were quite consciously trying to be a bit more, not experimental, because obviously we're not really an experimental band, but with arrangements. And we have our keyboard player, Luciano, is really an excellent musician. He's a sort of jazz, from a jazz background. And he was kind of taking the band in sort of different direction a little bit with that record. And with Idlewild, the new record, we were really quite conscious of keeping the songs quite succinct and quite like economical in that way. Like nothing there doesn't need to be there. But with the Mirror Still, that's the one that's kind of has more similarities to interview music and the way that we're approaching it, thinking like, what can we do with the bass, drums, guitar and keyboards, not adding too much other stuff. How can we make it like feel empty, but there's loads going on at the same time, which is a strange thing to say, I know. But so it was kind of we're quite experimenting with sounds a lot on that one, much more so than the other songs on the record, which are I guess more traditional in the way they're sort of structured. And lyrically too, I was able to kind of come off the music in terms of like make my words a bit vaguer, a bit more kind of, I guess like using sort of poetic forms rather than a lot of the other songs which are kind of more narrative. So yeah, I guess it's quite experimental for that, and it's right in the middle of the record too. So it's a kind of a palate cleanser before all the kind of the big tunes start again.
Yeah. And the mirror still exactly. What is that title? It's quite
Well,
interesting.
there's a line in it that says the mirror still needs its own reflection.
Uh,
So it's just to like obviously half that line, but obviously on its own, I love that. I love that when you take like little bits of lines out of context. Quite a lot of my song titles are like that. Actually, they're either actually bits from bits of the lyrics. I just felt it was like it made me have like I don't know like a still made of mirrors.
and what's your process in terms of writing songs? Do you ever fancy that that Bowie thing, that Barosian technique of just cutting up lots of things and see just what turns up?
I've done that a lot. Not so much for song lyrics, but I sort of dabbled in writing poems and stuff over the years. None of them are particularly good, but they sometimes lead to good song ideas. So I do that more when I'm for just writing. In terms of like songwriting, I'm very melody based. I mean, I come up with the melodies in Idlewild, and that's more important to me than the words really to begin with, because I think a good song's made by the melody, and then the words come unless you're Leonard Cohen or Bob Dylan or something, but most aren't. So
Uh,
I tend to work on off the melody more, and then I try and find a line that's not particularly obvious, but at the same time is memorable, like "You held the world in your arms" or "All I need is a little discourage" or these kind of things that, and I'll just and hammer that home
yeah.
by repeating it a lot. And then the verses are always exciting for me because the verses are where I feel I can really explore my poetic ideas a wee bit more. Choruses need to be remembered, but
Mm.
verses can be like you can be a bit more creative with the words there.
I remember I read a story about Brian Wilson writing California Girls. He was at the piano. He said he saw the melody forming above the piano.
Hmm.
That's what LSD does for you, see, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, there's definitely a magic in songwriting. I think some people, you read articles with songwriters and they'll say that it just appeared. And I've had that experience before of like,
Have you ever done a McCartney thing where you've dreamt something and you
never dreamt, but like I've definitely like walked into a room, picked up a guitar with other people. I always write songs with other people, and suddenly we've just written a really good song without even doing anything. But most don't happen like that. Most require work and like trying things out and stuff. But a few of like American English, the song that Idlewild sung from the remote part, which is quite a well-known song of ours, that was written so quickly, and it was almost like, did we just do that? There's an element of like, it sounds like we don't need to add anything else to that because it sounds, and I think everyone that writes songs or makes records has an experience of that quite often with songs that become popular.
yeah.
So I don't know if it's just you're tuned into something at that point, but yeah, I mean, I would never dismiss anything with any ideas with songs because it is a bit of a magical art form.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine. Interesting. I mean, talk about writing and writing songs. Writers for the present time is interesting. Is that aimed at anyone in particular, or I was going to ask you again, where did that title come from?
And that title came from well, again, it's a lyric from the second verse.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, where songs titles come from, I'm never really that the song that it's not like I'm titling a novel.
Mhm.
Obviously, song titles aren't. Um, so I tend to kind of like the Mirror Still or Writers of the Present Time choose lines from the song that will work, that can stand alone, or sections of that can stand alone. And but obviously that therefore people think that is the song is about this. Um, which is why I quite often sometimes keep the song titles quite vague for that reason. Writers of the Present Time isn't really about, if it's about anyone, it's probably about ourselves as writers of the present time. Um, but yeah, it's not literal about writers like I don't who are the writers of the present. The one I like is Karlov Newsgard. You know, the Norwegian writer. He's my favorite writer, but it's not about him.
Um, I mean, I think you mentioned the remote part. You know, as an album, it debuted at number three, I think, in the UK charts, behind Oasis. And I think you were a little bit late for the whole Britpop thing, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. Um, so I was going to ask you generally, what do you thought of that whole Britpop label, and what was your opinion of all that at the time? We talked about nostalgia in music. Do you not think that was ultimately a very nostalgic
Well,
movement?
I didn't like Britpop because I was, I was enthralled to American underground sort of rock records that I discovered in the like late 80s, early 90s. So
Did
bands
you
like
find there was
Black.
something quite with Britpop, something quite mawkish about it, that sort of
I
looking
didn't, yeah,
back
we
to
were
the
just like we were obsessed with like Sonic Youth, Pavement, Black Flag, the Replacements, REM, early REM records. That was there was there was like it was kind of art to me, all that kind of stuff. Whereas then Britpop came along when we were all students. We were all it was all around the time I was like leaving school and going to university, art school, and it was just ubiquitous everywhere. And we had our own kind of little music was a bit more tribal then, I suppose. We
yeah,
are our little gang of we liked American like records that no one had heard of,
yeah, yeah,
and we wanted to be in a band like that. So it was we were Idlewild in effect in a way were kind of like a reaction against stuff like that, you know.
mhm,
I didn't like. I mean, I liked Blur, but then Blur were not really Britpop to me. They preempted it, with the records before that. Um, but yeah, it wasn't a thing. And then obviously it didn't last that long. And then there was this big lull of remember like the late 90s. It was like they called it the new acoustic movement.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
lots of bands that didn't really make that many records, and Idlewild were kind of in amongst all that, very out of place.
And do you think grunge, I've interest in changing something a little bit, but do you think grunge was the last kind of original movement in music?
Yeah, I would say so. Well, certainly. Well, the wave of bands in the early noughties, like the Strokes, the White Stripes, the IAS, all these American bands came over. They were obviously like referencing, bands from the '70s and
Yeah,
whatever. But I felt that was quite original too, in a way that like I was a wee bit older then, so I was like I knew Marquee Moon by Television and all these records that they were
mhm,
referencing.
yeah,
But I know lots of my friends, got a lot of friends that are like 10 years younger than me. And that was their that was their moment. That was their Nirvana. For me, like Nirvana, all that kind of stuff. I was 14. So I think that I would never dismiss that as I think that was a really original time for a lot of people too, musically. But for me, certainly, yeah, it was the grunge explosion of the early 90s that was really like it felt like it was like nothing. I will never experience something like that again. Like suddenly all these amazing bands at once.
yeah, yeah. Um, a film for the future. I mean, was that a kind of you trying to embrace that grunge sound a little bit, do you think?
A wee bit, yeah. I mean, I was a big Stooges fan as well. I still
Okay.
am, and that was the we used to. I remember letting Rod, his guitar player, and I would hear Stooges records and saying like, "Can you come up with some riffs like this?" And also like, yeah, we loved like Nirvana, Mudhoney, all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely that kind of guitar player. And Rod's self-taught as well, so it's like like all the best punk rock guitar players are. So he wasn't able to do anything fancy.
Yeah,
So yeah, it kept it really kind of like basic.
yeah. I mean, you mentioned REM being a big influence. You supported REM, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
REM, are they as grumpy in real life as we tend to believe they are from their records and on-stage presence?
No, my experience of them was they were wonderful. I mean, I was
Yeah.
a big fan throughout my teens and 20s. Particularly the first two records, I love them. Murmur's maybe one of my favorite albums of all time.
Mhm.
And just to play with them was like it's such a pleasure and a privilege. And they were. I mean, we didn't actually hang about with them that much, but they were so gracious, and they would always thank us from the stage, um, and they were just well. Mike Mills is the one we got to know the best actually, because he came on stage with us one night and played piano.
Yeah.
Um, but they were all um, really lovely and very nice to us. But as I say, we didn't like hang about with them and go drinking or anything. But I have, yeah, nothing but good memories from that whole tour.
Yeah. Again, I read in I think a magazine article. If you said that this your band's music is a search for somewhere to belong. um, uh, psychologically, do you feel yourself to be a bit rootless, or I presume you're not talking about geographically? And if we mentioning geographically, I was going to ask you, how does Scotland or Scottishness sort of seep into your writing, if that's possible?
Yeah, well, I think that I moved around a lot when I was younger,
Yeah.
and that's the sort of transitory place. If someone says where are you from, I wouldn't really have. I don't have like a hometown because I moved around quite a lot. So Scotland became really important to me in that way. That when I lived in America and France and England and stuff, and I became almost more attached to being Scottish. It gave me real sense of my I am Scottish, um, and Scotland's a very supportive place for if you're an artist here, like Scottish writers and painters and bands, and they're really supported culturally, really supported. So that's why you get so many good bands from Scotland. I think is for
Yeah.
that reason. So yeah, it's very really important to me. And the Highlands and Islands. I live in the Hebrides, and the Highlands and Islands have we've written a lot of songs up in the Highlands and toured around Scotland a lot and I feel like as a sort of security in Scotland, a familiarity, a security that's can be very beneficial for um, being creative. But in terms of the band, that because I've always moved a lot when I was younger and as an adult a lot as well, and obviously being in a touring band, that searching for something is, I guess, the kind of thing that the common thread and common theme amongst all our records. Even from the remote part to Warnings and Promises, and even to the new one to a degree. Um, there's always that idea of the where are we going next? And that's an interesting thing because the cover of our very first album, Hope is Important, is a picture of two teenagers looking at a boat that's washed up on the shore. It's like a rotten boat. So it's like two people looking at the past in in the present moment. And the cover of the new record is the same scene, only I took the photograph, I just turned, it's full facing the other direction from that boat.
Ah, that's
So it's like
interesting.
it's a different horizon from the one I was looking at. Um, and I think that, yeah, I suppose the more I think about that, I realize that that's basically what the music's always been doing too. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. My father used to take me driving on the Yorkshire moors and saw how wonderful this scenery is. But my wife and I travelled up to the Highlands of Scotland this summer, and I must admit I've never seen anything as beautiful as the as some of that
yeah,
scenery, really. But I went to
no,
Loch
it's.
Ness as well, which was wonderful.
Well, the west coast of Scotland is really like something else. I mean, the Cairngorms and Loch Ness is all lovely as well, but the west coast is just it's the drama of
Yeah.
the hills and the sea and the
Oh,
colours and the
absolutely.
yeah, it's really it's otherworldly in
Such
that
a
way.
dramatic history as well. It's just
Oh
fantastic.
yeah,
But we went to, I said Loch Ness, didn't see anything. I was quite disappointed with that,
yeah.
unfortunately.
Well,
But
yeah, I don't think anyone's ever seen anything.
well, my wife suggested I kick my shoes and socks off and dip my feet in. He says if there's anything in there, it's bound to jump out. But nothing happened, I'm afraid.
No.
But back to music, I've got to ask you, listening to Idlewild, how influential were the Smiths on your writing, out of interest?
Well, I was a big Smiths fan when I was younger, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I still am, but I mean, I don't listen to them so much anymore. But like, yeah, I'd say when I was when I kind of got out of listening to heavy metal in my early teens, like 12, 13, the Smiths and R.E.M. were two of the bands that really kind of got me out of that and realizing like, because their Smiths and R.E.M. are kind of punk bands in their own way,
yeah.
but they don't, they're just, yeah.
Do you think the rage is replaced with a kind of a mopiness instead?
Well, not a mopiness, but just a kind of yeah, just a sort of there. Yeah, yeah. I don't never thought of them as mopey. They seem quite visceral to me almost when you listen to them. Like especially Hatful of Hollow. I had that on like 2 weeks ago. It's just kind of rocking. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, that's for the Hollow. That's a compilation album, though, isn't
yeah,
it?
but it's like a lot of it's live.
Yeah,
So what difference does it make from the Peel, John Peel show? That version is just incredible.
yeah, it is.
And Morrissey's kind of like, even though he's got that kind of voice and the way he sings it, it's like still kind of like so much intent there.
Yeah, I mean, talking about REM and the Smiths, were you struck by Radiohead when they first made an appearance?
Actually, no, because I saw my sister went to university in Brighton, and
Mhm.
I went to visit her, and it was like the Freshers' Bar, like it was
Yeah.
a Kingmaker supported by Radiohead, and we went along. It was free in, and I remember just thinking they were shit. But then obviously they were just like starting out. But weirdly, your first impressions last sometimes, don't they?
Mm.
Because then I remember being at Glastonbury like '95, and my friends were like, "Let's go and see Radiohead." I'm like, "No, they're rubbish. I've seen them before, and they were rubbish." And so obviously, I've yeah. So then I did the last time I saw them was on the Hail to the Thief tour at the Earl's Court, and they were kind of amazing. So like, they've improved a bit.
Well, I mean, they're one of those bands that seem to get roped in with this whole Britpop label, really. But I don't think they're in any way, shape,
No,
or
they weren't.
form.
No, they were more again. They were trying to be more of an American band to begin with, I thought. But it was just like I didn't like it initially when I first saw it when I was like young. But when you're young, you're much more reactionary, aren't you? You're like, this is crap. But
Yeah. Well, I remember a journalist, I think it was the NME or something, was saying a Radiohead when OK Computer came out that they're the new Pink Floyd.
yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, I think they're a remarkable band now. Obviously, and they're one of Britain's biggest ever bands, I guess. And they are quite left field still in the way they approach music. And yeah, I wouldn't call myself a fan, but like I'm certainly not. I certainly admire them. Yeah,
Yeah. What was it like supporting Pearl Jam? I read some of that Eddie Vedder was really, really quite supportive of you guys.
yeah. He was. I mean, again, that was a wonderful couple of months around America with.
Mhm.
They couldn't be nicer to us. They were like, yeah, just what a bunch of lovely men and great band, and just their fans love them. And that was a wonderful feeling of that. The front row was quite often the same each night.
You're right.
Like I took traveling, kind of like the Grateful Dead or something. You imagine like people really making a holiday around Pearl Jam shows. Yeah, we had a great experience.
And did you have was it as great as experience as supporting the Stones? Do you have any wonderful sort of Keith Richards stories?
No, but we met them all, and
Uh,
we got our photo taken with them.
uh
So and yeah, I mean it was a fairly surreal couple of nights, but yeah, they were really friendly. I mean, Charlie Watts was a lovely man, and the only conversation I had with Keith Richards was he thanked us for supporting, and he said the last time I supported a band was when I supported Bo Diddley, and I was like, "Ah, cool."
Well, that's something. Yes. Um, last couple of questions, really, because I've been told I've got to keep it to strictly to half an hour. I think you've probably got another interview or something like that to go to.
Well, I have to do them in the evenings because I have a young daughter. So
Ah, yes.
yeah, I'm looking to look after her during the day. So it's
My
easier
children,
just doing the pardon.
my children are a little bit older, so I've
Yeah.
just got to keep them off the devices, so it doesn't interfere with the wavelength of the. I was just going to ask you quite a generic question, really. Is there an album that you would say changed your life?
Well, I will say I'll go. I've mentioned it before, but I wouldn't say maybe changed my life is maybe a bit extreme, but certainly opened up. Is probably Murmur by R.E.M. because, like I say, at the time I'd listened to basically like Iron Maiden, Anthrax, Megadeth, just stuff like that. I have an older sister, and she was a big Smith fan, big R.E.M. fan, big Elvis Costello fan, and I started realizing that the stuff she's listened to was sounding a lot more interesting, and she got me Murmur on for my Christmas. And I remember listening to it the first time I listened to thinking, I don't know what this if I'm supposed to like this. This seems it was way out of my comfort zone,
Could you
which
actually
is funny
make out
because
what he
it's
was singing?
yeah, but it's funny because now it doesn't sound too radical. But for
No.
me, listening to metal and then suddenly listen to this, and I just listened to it again and again and just poured over it. And it revealed worlds. There was like mystery to it. And I was thinking, wow, it's four people together have made this thing that's like, I love it. And the cover and everything about it. It was, you didn't know much about bands back in the internet. I didn't know really anything about them other than from America.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that record's still magical for me. I put it on, probably like a couple of times every year, and I'm transported. It's really is I'd say maybe my favorite record of all time.
Yeah, I mean, it was pre-internet, of course. It was a different world. I mean, I remember growing up being a huge Pink Floyd fan in the '70s, and I had no idea what they looked like because
Yeah,
they put themselves on their albums. I had no idea what they even looked like until about 10 years later when these photographs on that momentary lapse of reason now. But I didn't even they were just
I
this
think
huge.
that's the only disappointing thing I think nowadays is like there's so many benefits for the internet, of course, but like I love that idea of like there would be a tiny photograph on the back of the album or the tape,
Yeah,
and you'd be like you get your magnifying glass out so you could see what the bass player looked like or something, I love that. Like, the mystery of music is like, I mean,
Everything
it's
is so
not,
exposed now.
yeah, but I mean, like, there, I mean, yeah, I think, but I think it's because younger people they're not interested in that. But like, I don't know. I mean, we still only put tiny wee pictures of ourselves in the records.
Last question for you, which is a question I ask everybody really, because I'm always interested in people's take on this. Um, uh, Frank Zappa said, "Jazz isn't dead; it just smells funny." Um, with rock and roll these days, with bands miming, playing to backing tracks, not performing live, how healthy is rock and roll in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know what? I just think I've got a teenage son who likes playing drums, and his pals play music, and I just think if you're drawn towards it's as a mode of expression, it's so instantaneous and it's so exciting to be part of a band or going to see a band. And that feeling you get, that exchange of ideas, it's like like nothing else. If you're in a club or a small theater or whatever, watching a band, or if you're playing in a band with other people, I just don't think that'll ever get boring for humans. So like it
So,
goes in waves and stuff like how do we buy it and how do musicians make a living and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, these are pertinent questions that I'm try to work my way all through that for the past 20 years as well. So, but the actual physical act of playing music, like loud music together with other people in front of other people, is less. Yeah, that's like one of the best inventions.
so Gene Simmons' assertion that rock is dead, you don't agree with him? I
No,
think
I
he was,
don't. Well,
I
it
think he
depends.
meant really the music industry is
I
dead.
think it depends how you define rock, doesn't it? I mean, like live music and like loud live music, no, definitely not. In terms of like maybe what he expected to get from a record when it come out, obviously things have totally changed in that way. It used to be like he'd sell quite a lot of records. Now, if you sell like 5,000 records, it's a big success, you know. So it's just totally changing that way for those guys that sold millions of records and played stadiums. Yeah, it's a totally different world. I get that.
Uh,
But I don't think actual rock music is ever going to disappear.
but Roger Daltrey, in his autobiography, said streaming is a form of theft.
Mm.
I imagine he does all right out of streaming compared to
Yeah,
a
well,
lot of
I
people.
know also like like streaming has like allowed people to listen to like loads and loads of music. So
Yeah,
kids nowadays have like listen to jazz fusion and stuff like that, which I couldn't ever access when I was younger.
yeah.
Whether that's a good thing or bad thing, but
Well, I quite like a bit of jazz
I
fusion.
mean, I actually do as well. Yeah,
Anyway, I will repeat what I said at the start of the interview. The release of the new album by Idylewild, titled Idylewild, is out on October the 3rd, which is this Friday, I believe,
it
isn't
is.
it?
It comes out on Friday. Yeah.
October the 3rd via V2 Records. There is a purchasing link just below this video. I urge you to go and check it out. Roddy, thank you so much for your time and the best of luck with this album. Hopefully, you'll sell absolute shitloads of it.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Yeah, I hope so too.
Anyway, all the best. I'll let you get on to your next interview or get a cup of tea before your next interview, maybe, whatever.
Yeah. Thanks
All the
very
best.
much. Nice to talk to you.
My pleasure. Bye bye.
Bye bye.